welcome to this episode of Own Your Business. I'm your host, Jared J. Greer, Executive Coach, and I'm pretty excited to be able to have another conversation with you guys today and bring you a phenomenal guest. I'm going to go through kind of his professional background. He's already on, and then I'm going to give a not so professional background and some experience of how I actually met Erik. He doesn't know I'm doing this, so this is a little bit of a surprise. But Erik Huso, he's the co-founder of Effect Epic, which is a national human development and consulting group. He also has a podcast by that same name, which is awesome. We might get into a little bit of that today. But he's also the director of the American Leadership Academy there in Gilbert, Arizona. So has definitely a lot of experience with leadership, a lot of experience developing youth. He's also a very dedicated, committed father. And Erik, I don't know how many kids you have. How many kids do you have?
I have 6 kids, almost 7.
Six kids.
My son just got engaged on Friday, so that's almost 7. I'm
No
done now.
way. Congrats. Holy cow. So then the grandkids might be on the horizon. Who knows? Then it's a whole nother counting game.
Yeah.
So I met Erik, man, it's probably been 2000. It must have been 2004, 2003, maybe even. Playing basketball at 5 o'clock in the morning. Erik was one of the unstoppable guys on that basketball court, just a big dude that just throws his weight around and is able to dominate underneath. So a lot of fun going back and forth. But my absolute best moment with Erik, and he doesn't know I'm going to share this, but so I'm insane. You guys know I'm a triathlete. I've competed in a few Ironman events. And in 2011, I'm running down the hill in St. George, Utah, trying to finish the marathon leg of Ironman St. George. And all of a sudden, around comes the corner, Erik Huso. Erik, how tall are you?
6'4".
6'4", roughly. How much do you weigh? You don't have to give it away, but me solid muscle, so it doesn't really matter.
240 pounds.
Okay, so not your typical Ironman triathlete, light as a feather, just zipping around. This dude is cruising. He's wearing his, we all wear spandex in Ironman. It's just the way of life. But it's like just white with salt. Just the dude is just sweating and just chugging along and crushing it. So I was thrilled. I didn't even know he was a cyclist, didn't know he was a triathlete. I think at that time we had just moved to Washington, D.C., so it was just such a pleasant surprise. So Erik, thank you for coming on the show. Super excited to learn from you today. All about leadership, how you got to be who you are. So thanks for joining today. Give us just a little bit of background about how you got to where you are, and please start from where you were building pools for people.
Well, okay. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a sportscaster. The thought of getting paid money to watch sports was a dream, And then my senior year in high school, I got a little maturity and realized that maybe that wouldn't be the best family life. And so I started to panic, oh crap, I haven't paid attention in any of these career fairs that the school's been putting on, because I already knew what I was going to do. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was pondering, and I was mowing my grandma's lawn, and she had some big acreage, and so I had a big riding lawnmower, just up and down. So it gave you time to think. And I was thinking, what can I do that would really be meaningful and fulfilling? And the thought came to be a teacher. And
wow.
I had never considered being a teacher before, and that's kind of ironic because both my mom and my dad were teachers. And maybe that's why I didn't consider it, because you don't want to grow up in poverty, right?
Right, exactly.
About poverty. And so I thought, I'll be a teacher. And so from that moment on, I was committed to that pathway. And most teachers have some kind of second employment to supplement their income. And so eventually, serendipitously, I got into the pool business. So my wife was from California. She did not think that living in Arizona without a swimming pool was humane for our children. So she's like, listen, if we're going
and it's not right. I mean,
yeah. we got to have a pool. I'm like, well, I didn't have a pool growing up, we survived without a pool, but she thought, we got to have a pool, but I couldn't afford a pool. And so I did some research, ended up connecting with my cousin and, and, and learned that you could build your own pool. And so I built my own pool in my back.
No ways that can go wrong in any way.
And then about a year later, my brother's like, hey, dude, can you build me a pool? And I'm like, well, no, I'm not a pool builder. He's like, well, I'll be the owner builder and you just teach me how to do it. And so I helped him build a pool a year later. And then my phone started to ring. Like his friends started calling me. People would come over to my house like, hey, can you teach me how to build a pool? And then all of a sudden, like, I should start a business with this, teaching people how to build their own pool. And so I started that business 18 years ago and have passed it on to my son. So my son's now working that, teaching people how to build their own pools because I just have too much to do that. But yeah, so that was that. And I've been in education for most of my career professionally. And but one of the challenges that I face, and a lot of people might face this, is when you're in one job and one career for an extended period of time, it's easy to fall asleep. It's easy to get into habits, going through the motions, and just kind of not being awake to what's possible.
Yeah.
So that's where I was, and I was super busy, and I had a really cool experience happened to me shortly after that 2011 Ironman that you and I raced together. In September of 2011, I had a stroke, and I was
You had a stroke.
Yeah, crazy. So I'm on the front yard lawn playing catch with my son, and I just got dizzy and just melted into a pile of flesh on the grass. And at first he thought, I was teasing. He came over, Dad, what's wrong? And I can't talk, and I'm paralyzed on one side, and I've lost my sight, and finally I'm spit out, go get mom, but it's slurred speech, and experienced a miracle that led to my full recovery. So anyway, in the hospital for a few days trying to figure out what caused it, and they found that I had a little hole in my heart that EFO that was from birth. So I got a little heart surgery to close that hole up. So I'm 100%. I'm all good now.
But I immediately feel like a worse friend. I had no clue about any of this. So
it's okay. It's okay.
Oh my goodness.
It's okay. But here's what happened. It gave me time where I was in the hospital for a week. It gave me time to analyze my life. It gave me an opportunity to wake up, where I was able to have some real conversations with my wife to say, okay, is this world, is this life that we've created, were we really intentional, or is it by default? Are we just living in life? Is this what we want? And so we decided that a career change might be the best thing for me, because working a couple jobs and having rental properties and doing everything I was doing, like and having 6 kids, I was spread really thin, and we decided that a different direction would be the best thing for our family, and felt really good about it. So that led us on a path of trying to do a little career change. And I found out really quickly that there was not a demand in the business world for a teacher. Like there's a big goal between education and business, and like nobody was just knocking on my door saying, come work for me. And so I had to beat that. And so I had to start networking. I had to start creating relationships with people in the business world. I subscribed to Harvard Business Review, and I started reading books and just became just hungry and thirsty to learn everything I could about business, about people, about management, about culture, about all these things. And it just woke me up to this world, what is possible. And so
I'm just going to stop you right there, because I know you're about to go into maybe where that career took you, but I want to double back and talk about two things. Number one, you said a minute ago, people are asleep, and you mentioned habits. And so I want to know from you, what's the relationship between habits that people have and that sense of awareness of what's going on, of what their life is actually like? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what did that analyzing process look like? You said you analyzed your life. I've known you for a long time, so I know pre that it's not like your life was a train wreck, right? So those two things. What's the relationship between your habits and that ability to be aware? And then two, what was that analyzing process like?
Okay. So habits on one hand can be super effective, right? If you've got good habits, positive habits where you don't have to think, where you just have the habit of setting your alarm for 5 a.m., getting up, going exercising. You've got these different habits in the day that can really be a positive thing in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with habits is it can lull you into being unintentional. It can lull you into just not realizing that there's more. And so you just start acting out of habit and not out of clear intention. You don't wake up today and you don't have the question on your mind, what do I want to create today? Who do I want to serve today? What difference can I make today? Like, you don't go through those thought processes when you're full of habit. And so while habit can be really good for your physical health, like the way you eat, and for your spiritual health, the way you do your personal worship, those kinds of things they can be effective in setting those patterns. It's a double-edged sword. And so you've got to be awake to the fact that your habits can lull you into mediocrity. And that's where I was. So does that kind of answer your first question?
Yeah, for sure. And I would agree. That's kind of why I asked it, because I think a lot of times our habits, and maybe I'll take it a step back, our society supports sometimes the laziest parts of us, right? And so it's easy to then build habits around that, and a habit itself can become automatic. And so that can create complacency. And so we have to, take it up. We always have to be aware to be able to increase that level of intensity. Yeah. So I totally agree. I think you've got to make sure you've got the right habits, but you're also continuously pushing and evaluating. That's why I asked the second question. What's that analyzation like?
So before I answer your second question, let me just add one more thing with habits. So our brain is designed to be efficient.
Yep.
So we have to recognize that physiologically our brain wants to put us into habits. Like, think about when you drove home to work. Like, you'll pass multiple streets and not even think about, not even recognize, like, you'll be like, oh, I'm home. Like, you're just in autopilot. So the more that your brain can go on autopilot, it wants to conserve energy. That's just what it's physiologically designed to do. And, that serves us well so that we can save energy for where it's needed. But it also can, like we've talked about, lull us to sleep. So we just got to be aware of that and be aware that my brain's going to always try to put me into going through the motions mode. And so you got to shake it up, shake it up, go to different restaurants, drive a different pathway home. Just doing little things like that can just keep you awake to the fact that, hey, I don't want to get stuck just going through the motions. I want to create in my world. I want to be a powerful, intentional creator of my day. I want to be an artist. I want to draw a beautiful picture every day of my day. I don't want to just make photocopies.
Right.
Of some piece of artwork. Okay. So, second question, what did that actually look like? Well, what it looks like is I am super grateful for incredible friends and mentors. Like, this wasn't a process that I went through all alone.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I'm going to point out 4 different people that really made a difference in this time. Okay. Number 1 was my wife. So obviously my wife was at the hospital with me the whole time. Right. And she is a beautiful person, a perfect spouse. She's not the perfect spouse, because there's no such thing as a perfect spouse. She's just an incredible human being that I'm blessed to.
Perfect for you.
She is perfect for me. And so, her strengths really do complement my weaknesses. And so she loves change. She loves to push. She likes to try new things. And, I'm the paint looks good on the wall how it is. I don't need a new color. That's how I am.
Says every husband ever.
Yeah. She's kind of driving this conversation, pushing me like, are you sure? Because I love my job. I was effective, man. I love my students. I loved what I did. There wasn't ever a day where I went to work saying, I don't love being a teacher. Like, I loved my job and I was effective at it. And so the thought of leaving that was painful for me.
Yeah, sure.
It really hurt. But she pushed me past that and to look at what else is possible. And there are other ways that you can still be a teacher. There are other ways where you can still make a difference in the lives of youth and kids. And so, number one, it was her being relentless in pushing me to see beyond what I was looking at. Number two was my brother-in-law. He and I were the co-founders of Effect Epic. And we do that podcast together. That's awesome. And this man inspires me. Okay. So today, right now, he's participating in Race Across France.
Oh my gosh.
He's riding 1,800 miles in a period of 6 days with a partner. And, there's no rest, there's no sleep. So it's like 2 hours on the bike, 2 hours off the bike, 2 hours on the bike for 6 days continuously, 130,000 feet of elevation gain.
Oh gosh.
This guy is the most committed human being you'll ever meet. Like, he puts his mind to something, he will do it or he will die. Like, there's no quit in this man.
Yeah.
And for multiple days, he took off work and was in the hospital with me. And sorry, I don't want to get emotional, but
you're good, man.
His commitment to me. He's a brother, he's a friend, married to my sister, but he also has, over our lifetime, inspired me to see that more than what I was doing was possible. And so those conversations with him were incredible. A third person that really made a difference was a mentor. My hero is my dad. And number two is my uncle. And number three is this man. He likes to be anonymous, so I'm not going to name him. But this man, sorry, I got emotionally. I'm gonna get my act together.
You're
but
okay.
This man came and he visited me in the hospital, and the words that he said were so powerful that I wrote them down because I did not want to forget what he said. And they're in my journal today because I transferred my journal as he talked about who he saw me as and who I could become. And so the fourth person was my best friend from high school. His name is Brandon Craig. So I don't know if you know Brandon.
I don't know. I don't know him.
So Brandon is one of the most powerful coaches in the world. And he's coached many of the top leaders throughout the world. And he's put together a firm called Ontacore, which is an incredible leadership development organization. And he and I were best friends in high school. And we spent some time together talking there in the hospital. And he, we were best friends, and then he moved away and we both get married, and life happens, and you kind of go, you have just maybe one or two touch points a year, basically after high school, but from that point on, he kind of took me under his wing and mentored me. And, he's getting paid thousands and thousands of dollars to coach people. And he's calling me up and saying, hey, you want to go to lunch? And we spend 2 hours together. And from that moment on, over the next 4 or 5 years, really helped me see what was possible. So much so that I was on a leadership retreat with him and 5 of his clients.
Wow.
And I interviewed, I had conversations with his clients. Like, tell me what it's like working with Brandon. I know what it's like, being his friend and growing up with him. Tell me what it's like working with Brandon. And and it was like a no-brainer. It's like, I have got to elevate my relationship with Brandon. Like, being his friend is awesome, and having him to be my coach, that's what I want. And so I approached Brandon and said, Brandon, um, what would it take for me to hire you to be my coach? And his response was, well, I'm not going to give you a discount because I don't want to give you a discounted version of me. If you want me to coach you, you'll pay full price like everybody else. And I will be all in with you like I am with everybody else.
Wow.
And so that was what I will call as one of the great hinges of my life, where I made a decision. I took every dollar that I had in my savings account and wrote him a check.
Wow.
And that was a demonstration of my commitment to become the kind of leader that I've become today. And if I had not made that decision, Jared, to make that commitment, we wouldn't be talking right now, because you wouldn't see me as somebody who's a leader that could make a difference, and somebody who you would want to be on the line with. The success that I've had over the last few years of my life really were laid on the foundation of having that coaching relationship with Brandon. So
Wow.
I guess long answer to your question is, I had 4 incredible mentors.
Yep.
That saw me for who I was and who I could become, and would not be satisfied with me just going through the motions and just being average.
I want to just say a couple things on that. And first of all, just thanks for sharing. I mean, certainly some deeply personal experiences that you've had, and just thank you for being so open and sharing with us. I also know that if all of this was post 2011 Ironman, I would still want to talk to you. So that that would still happen. But I also love the idea of having mentors just in general. I just so strongly believe in mentors. I've had the same mentor for ever since 2001, who now I talk to multiple times a week. Brilliant man, went to Harvard Business School, has been somebody in my life that when I'm like, oh, I totally have this figured out, he's like, but did you think about it this way?
Yeah.
Or, you know what you're doing now kind of feels like this. And my wife does that for me. I've got other people in my life who do that for me as well. And so it's one thing to have people around you supporting, say, hey, you can do it, you're awesome. It's another thing to have people who can give you a different perspective, who can say to you, hey, you're playing small. And for everybody listening, for everybody who's, going through maybe a difficult time, you don't have to go out and hire an expensive coach to start to get some of that. But you do have to start letting people in. You have to start thinking about, okay, who can help me see from a different perspective? And one of the quotes from Think and Grow Rich says, or no, it's actually Albert Einstein. He says, a man cannot solve his problems with the same level of thinking that created them. And so what you've just described is gold for anybody who's looking to get to that next level in any area. Let people in. Ask somebody, hey, what do you think my biggest weaknesses are? Hey, what do you think I should be spending my time doing? I talked to a friend yesterday who, we were talking business, and he kind of called me out on some of my strategies, and like, I think that's safe. I think it's small. I think that you should be doing this, 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 and this. Will you do that tomorrow? And I was like, first of all, he's not my coach. He's just my friend. But it kind of pierced me, and I was like, okay, I've got to do something different. And I agreed with him. So love that, just the whole idea of having that network, having that additional perspective. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. If I could add on what you just said, Jared, just second it. you have to, sometimes you might not be open to feedback. And so people might want to give you feedback, but you might, your way of being with them is they're nervous to give you feedback for how you might respond. And so that's something that you'll have to own, and that you create the people around you. And so start with your, if you're married, start with your spouse.
Amen.
Where you go to your spouse and you say, how do you experience me as your husband, or how do you experience me as your wife? And if I could do one thing to make your life better, what would be that one thing? And then listen to them. Act like, listen to them. Don't judge them. Don't criticize their feedback. Just own their feedback like it's 100% accurate and true. And then they'll be more open and committed to giving you feedback. You'll start to create that relationship, and then go on with, you know, your friends, your associates, and just create a network, a handful of people right around you that can give you that honest feedback. Otherwise, you know, you've done that, Jared. You've done that with that colleague you just said. If you were a know-it-all, if you came off as, hey man, I know everything, and I'm the man, I'm the best guy out there, there's no way your friend would have been comfortable telling you you're playing small.
Yep.
But you've been coachable with him. You've been accountable and open to feedback with him in a way that he felt comfortable giving you that feedback.
I'm a feedback junkie. Honestly, I really look around and I'm like, no, they have an opinion and I want to know what that is. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but I want to know it. Somebody has thoughts or ideas of how I can do things better or differently, or how I made them feel, or how I might be able to change to make them feel. And for me, it has nothing to do with, I want to please everyone. It has everything to do with, as you look at the trends in people's opinions, you can start to tease out some truth. Yeah. You can start to pull out, hey, there's some accurate trends there that they can't all be wrong, right? So, I am always asking for. My wife is actually kind of sick of it sometimes. She's like, "Do you really want their feedback? Like, you know, the lady that works at Walmart, do you really want her feedback?" I'm like, yeah, why not? She has something to say. So awesome. Okay, so take us now to, and definitely want to get into all of the leadership stuff that you're doing with the youth, because I think that's huge. Take us now to where you transition to.
So I took a job transfer to California, had a great experience there. Needed to move back to Arizona after a year being in California, and didn't have a job, and just started building pools. And I happened to be building the pool for the CEO of American Leadership Academy, the organization that I work for now. And we got to talk, and he's like, you got to come work for us. You'd be a great addition to our team. So started to work for American Leadership Academy, and just had a great experience. Their mission, their vision, they're just totally aligned with what I'm committed to. And so because of that alignment, it was like a no-brainer. So, but I also, as I came into American Leadership Academy, saw some flaws, saw some things that from my previous experience, my previous employment, that I could actually really serve this organization. And so I put together a proposal to become their director of leadership development, and that was accepted. And so spent a year creating some leadership development curriculum for both teachers and for students, and had the great opportunity to coach some of our directors that just loved, just helping them in their own personal leadership. Because, as you've experienced, when you have the ears of the leader, like it just, the impact of your work just magnifies.
It actually works.
Yeah. So if I'm working with the teachers and if I don't have the complete commitment of their leader, then like it just totally minimizes what I can do. So where I had the greatest success was with the teachers, where I had the opportunity to coach the directors that they worked for, their managers. So did that. And then CEO calls me into his office and said, we're opening up a new campus in Gilbert and we want you to run it. And I was like, No, I don't. Who wants to be a high school principal? You
Yeah.
know, it's a lot of it's tough work, and it just didn't align with me. Like I thought, that just doesn't call to me. And so he said, take 30 days and think about it. Then he calls me that night. It's like, hey, I know I told you 30 days, but we have to have a decision at 7 in the morning. Can you meet us for breakfast? And so we had to do a quick family council to do pros and cons. And the more I thought about it, it really did align with what I was committed to in this world. And I saw it as a chance of a lifetime opportunity to create a school, to start a school from the foundation, to create the culture. And this would be the school that my own children would be attending. And so it became real personal to me to build the greatest educational institution in the country. And so I said yes. And for the past year and a half plus, been working hard at creating the greatest educational institution in the country. So we started, it was a alfalfa field, and today we're full. We have a waiting list. We're
Wow.
in week 3 of year 2. We have a waiting list, and have an incredible team and incredible staff. Kids love coming to school. They're loving learning for the first time in a long time because of the experience that they're having in the classroom with their teachers. And I attribute that to the team that I've assembled and the culture that they've bought into.
Love
So
that.
that's kind of where I've been the last couple of years.
I want to get into that. So I just want to point out again, I mean, here you are, you're building a pool in the backyard of this guy's house, and you have a conversation with him. He invites you on board. And what I love is that you actually create your own role. You go and you start to say, okay, if I were to do this, and if for it to align with my life, this is what it would need to look like. He obviously took it. But then when he comes back with that next thing, again, you're evaluating, is this in alignment? You say no to him, and you go back and evaluate, is this in alignment? And I think too often people are just saying yes because they think, oh, this will get me in good graces with this person. And I think your story shows that, hey, we've got to take the shots, but we've got to take the shots on our own terms.
Yeah.
And yes, there's risk involved with that. They may say no, they may not accept your offer, but maybe now someone else will. You've created the offer. So just encourage people that are listening to take those shots, make sure that they're in alignment with really what is most important to you, so that when you do say yes, you can be all in. And certainly the opportunity to build a school for your kids is amazing. Talk to us about how you're developing. I mean, it's American Leadership Academy. Talk to me how you're developing leadership with these kids. And while you're thinking about that, I just want to share my own personal experience. I was asked to do interviews for a youth leadership program here in the area. And one of the questions that we ended up starting to ask the kids as they came in was, what is the number one misconception of that or misperception that adults have about kids your age? And almost across the board, the answer came back that we aren't capable of doing more, that we don't get it, that we don't care. And it was, I mean, these kids' resumes were ridiculous compared to they're better resumes than mine. And yet even these kids who were high flyers felt that from adults. So you tell me how you guys are building leadership at American Leadership Academy with your youth.
Beautiful. So you bring up a great point. If you don't see yourself as a leader, you won't become a leader. And if you are building leaders and you don't see them as leaders, you will not build leaders. And so you have to recognize the context, your mindset, your paradigm for how you see young people. If you see young people as less than, if you see them as lazy, if you see them as uncommitted, if you see them as all they want to do is play video games, if you see them as some of these misconceptions about our young people today, then you will never have success in helping them become leaders and fulfill their full potential. So first of all, as a leader wanting to help young people become leaders, you have to own your mindset that you have of youth. Okay. Do you
Powerful.
do you see them as incredible leaders? And if not, then that's on you. That's not on them, right?
Right.
That's probably, if I'm going to be real with you, that's probably a judgment that you have of yourself. You know, our judgments of other people are often mirrors and they're reflective.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing these young people as less than, it's probably really useful, a tool, a teacher for you to help you maybe see something inside that's getting in the way of you being a leader. Okay. So number one, you got to see them as a leader. Number two, you have to demonstrate it. Okay, you can talk all you want, you can give lessons all you want, but if you give them an experience that's inconsistent with what you talk about, they will sniff you out as a fraud and you will have zero impact on them. And so that's where the great challenge comes, because none of us are perfect, right? And
Right.
so we can't be perfect, but uh, as we are committed to demonstrating what we've said we're committed to, then they also sense that. They sense when a person is real, authentic, and committed. And so that's the second piece, is you've got to be in demonstration of that. So for us in our organization, we have 5 values that our organization has said, hey, this is what we're committed to. And these 5 values align with me personally, and it's something that I can get behind 100%. They're universal values. They spell the acronym RAISE. So it's respect, accountability, integrity, service, and excellence. And so with these 5 values, they are what I believe to be the foundation to help anybody become an incredible leader. So we have lessons that we give the kids. You know, I told you I wrote some curriculum for our kids. So we have lessons that we give. I coach our teachers on what Stephen R. Covey calls the ubiquitous approach to leadership development. And that's not where you just have a specific lesson on a specific day, but that you weave these principles into every lesson, into every situation, into every day. So between the demonstration and the lessons where they get the content, and then the ubiquitous approach, they're consistently being exposed to examples of leadership.
So if I'm walking into your school and I'm just kind of walking around, what are some of the things that I will see that demonstrate what you're talking about? And how is it different than other schools, right? From other, schools in the area? What will I see differently there than, other schools?
Well, you're going to see kids that will actually look you in the eye, and they'll recognize human beings around them. And I don't want to give an idea that we have this utopia over here and that all of our kids are perfect, because that's not the case at all, and it's always a work in progress. But a distinction that you'll see here versus some other school that you would walk onto is that kids will demonstrate a level of respect to you that you are probably not used to experiencing on a school, where they'll see the human beings that are around them and they'll acknowledge them and they'll serve them, they'll talk to them, etc. That'll probably be the biggest thing that you would see.
Yeah.
So as you're walking, you're like, hey, this is different. I'm sensing something different.
So let's just talk about the respect one, because I think so. Our oldest is 6, so she's now starting she's starting first grade. She did kindergarten last year, and our biggest fear was that she wouldn't be respected, that she would be treated like a kid versus like an adult. And we try really hard to treat our kids like adults. When we go to restaurants, they're the ones who tell the server what they want to eat. They make the decisions. And we try not to talk down to them or say, I'm the parent because I said so, all of that kind of stuff. How are you teaching that to maybe even the educators as well as to the kids, that they're on the same level and they're able to have that communication, or they're able to have that mutual respect?
Yeah. So that is a consistent message that we share with our teachers, is to see your students as leaders, to see your students with a new, fresh set of eyes. So that's what, you know, respect, the word comes from a Latin word respectus that really means to look again. And as human beings, we make judgments of people all the time. Our brain is a judgment machine. It's consistently assessing safety, threats. You know, is this a reliable source? Can I trust this person that I'm talking to? And all this is going on in the background. And so, like water to a fish, this judgment is going on in front of us and could cloud us, could really like prevent us from seeing what a person really truly is. And so, we have to be awake to that, and we have to remove the judgments that we have of other people and look again. So I might have a judgment of my 6-year-old that, you know, they are really shy and they don't like to interact with the server. And so that judgment might create a context that every time I go to the restaurant, I order for my kid. And respect requires me to look again, to say, hey, I'm going to give my kid another chance to order at the restaurant. In the classroom, you could have a kid that's obnoxious. And, you know, as a teacher, it's really easy to create a judgment of a kid. And then you kind of, that's the kid, you're sarcastic and you kind of, you know, I hope you didn't have any teachers like that did that to you, but you know,
only all of them, but
it's a common thing for a teacher to gain a judgment of a kid and then to keep that judgment for the entire school year. Think about that, 9 months of lost opportunity, 9 months of not being able to make a difference, 9 months of not being able to make an impact in this child's life, all because you don't respect that kid. You're not willing to look again. And so that's what I teach my teachers is you have to look again. Every day, give that kid a fresh look. What can I do to serve this kid? What can I do to help this kid become more than they were yesterday? And if you can get that mindset with your teachers, if you can get that mindset as parents, then your kids, it's reciprocal. You know, they will start to show a different level of respect. And
I love that. I think the world is they don't help that sometimes. And a perfect example, I took my daughters earlier today to get donuts, and so they're yay tall, and they can't even see the person on the other side of this big, huge, shelf or whatever it is. And I told my eldest daughter, hey, you've got to tell her what donut you want. And she's kind of like, I don't know if I want to. And I was like, well, if you don't, then you're not going to get a donut. So it's your choice. So she finally musters up the courage. But the whole time that I'm having this dialogue with my daughter, this woman on the other side is like, oh, do you want this one? Do you want this one? Trying to kind of make it easy for my daughter to just nod her head versus communicate like I would expect the woman to be communicating with me. She's not asking me if, I want every single one. But what was really awesome was finally my daughter asked for the donut she wanted. She spoke up, and my younger daughter, who's 4, followed suit.
Yep.
And very confidently, almost more confidently than I've seen her speak to an adult before, she nailed it. She totally nailed it. And so it was this example of, yeah, we've got to make sure that they're doing that a lot more often. And then how do you kind of navigate the other people that are like, oh, do you want this one? Do you want that one? Because that was tough. And I recognized that even in that woman's best intention, she was kind of, playing into this idea that like, oh, you don't need to tell me, you don't need to communicate with me like everybody else does. You just need to point, which is what we don't want with our kids, right? We don't want them walking around pointing. So tell us some feel good stories. What are some things that you've seen, or maybe some examples of where you've seen this RAISE framework impact the kids? And would love to just hear some kind of big wins that you guys have seen.
Well, the big wins come from the stories for the parents where, they come back and say, thank you so much for what you've done for me, what you've done for our family, what you've done for my kid, right? And so if you don't mind, I'll just speak from my own perspective as a parent. And the impact that it's made in my own children's life. So, as we've had this conversation, my shift wasn't a shift in values. I'm still the same person that I was 10 years ago today. I haven't changed my values. I've just become awake to what I could be and awake to intention and, the experiences that I want to have on a day-to-day basis. That's been the shift. And so part of this shift was, here I am a teacher and I've got 100 plus kids, and my students love me and they would come to me for advice, and I had great influence in the classroom, and I didn't have influence with my own kids in my own home.
Wow.
So most parents can relate to this, where, when your kids are 6 and 4, you're the king. Like, they love you, they worship you, like they have daddy time is like their whole world. And then most parents go through this thing that I call the trough, where all of a sudden you're ignorant, you don't know anything, you're old, like there's like, who are you? And then, they get married and they realize, oh, maybe dad, oh, that's why mom and dad did that. And then they start to kind of rebuild that relationship.
I feel like you're telling me that my sweet daughters aren't going to be sweet daughters forever. I'm just kidding.
That's a lie that people buy into, Jared. And it doesn't have to be that way. And you can create a powerful relationship with your teenagers. And you do it through these principles that we're talking about, okay? The reason why teenagers go into that trough is because for some reason parents start judging their teenagers. They start thinking that, like, you shouldn't think like a teenager, you should think like me as an adult. And they stop relating to their teenagers. They stop hearing their teenagers. Their teenagers don't feel heard by their parents. And so they go to their friends who say, they cry on your shoulder and yeah, you're perfect and you're good. They feel heard by their friends, and their friends aren't necessarily going to give them great advice. But the reason why they go to their friends is because they don't feel heard by their parents.
Do you think that they stopped that, or do you think that they never did it, and that younger kids are just more compliant and they kind of have to go along and have to do what mom and dad say versus, what we're talking about?
They never did it. And so my advice to you as a father of a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old is to continue to have those conversations with your kids where you just authentically listen to them without judging them. You just listen to them, and that will never stop, and you won't experience the trough. And so, going back, and then in my own world, I recognize that I had these great relationships with my students, but I was in a trough with my own teenagers.
Wow.
My own teenagers didn't listen to my advice. That my own teenagers, I didn't have that relationship with them. And that was because my students could screw up and I loved them anyway. And my own kids would screw up and I was harsh on them and judgmental towards them. And I didn't extend the same mercy to my own kids as I did my own students. And so after recognizing that, I went on a path to, I'm going to relate with my kids. And, we're not saying that you just become their friend, because, there's rules and there's standards, and you don't violate those, but where you just are with your kids and you ask them questions and you hear them, and it creates a bond that is so special and so sacred. And so that's the biggest thing for me, like the biggest win. If I'm going to tell you a win, it's the ability to relate to my kids on that powerful level and restore that relationship that every parent wants with their kid, right? Every parent wants that powerful relationship with their kid.
I love that. I'm just keeping track of time, and I know that we only have a few minutes left. We've covered so much. So what has been, ultimately, it sounds like that's probably been most rewarding. what is your advice for those parents out there who might be struggling with their kids right now? What is what is step one? And maybe it's what you just described, but what would be your step one? Because certainly you don't have to look very hard to find a parent who's struggling with a kid, a youth, and any age. So what would you recommend for that kind of first step for some of these parents?
Yeah. So, oh, uh, I don't know if there's a universal answer, Jared,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to point out a couple things that could work. Okay, because the answer might be different for every situation, but there has to be a level of trust between parent and child, right? And for me, where I saw where I had created mistrust with my own children is my own lack of integrity,
Hmm.
where I was not honoring my word. So, if I tell my kids I'm going to be home at 5 o'clock and they can count on me that I am home at 5 o'clock, that creates a level of trust where every word that comes out of my mouth, they can count on. And if I tell my kids, I'll take you to the store tonight, and I don't take him to the store tonight, or if I tell my son we'll go camping next weekend and we don't go camping next weekend, that plants seeds of distrust where they then, every word that comes out of my mouth, they're judging whether or not they can count on it or not.
Yeah.
So I recognize that in a lot of small things, I was giving my word. Yeah, I'll be home at this time. Yeah, we'll do this. Yeah, we'll go do that. And I didn't keep my word. And so I created a scenario where my kids had to judge everything that came out of my mouth instead of actually just hearing me. And so they're judging me. And so I would say, number one, parents, look at where you're giving your word and not keeping your word, and shore that up where you are a person that everything that comes out of your mouth can be counted on. And if for some reason you've given your word to your kid that we're going to go to the movies on Friday night at 7 o'clock and something comes up where you can't do that, like you have to, the moment you realize that you're not going to be able to keep your word, you have to own that. And you have to clean up the mess associated with that. I know you made plans. You told your friends no because you wanted to be with me. And so let me help you fix that. Let's see if we can get together with your friends. Let's see if on Saturday night we can go at the matinee at 2 o'clock. That's first available. And so your kids just know that everything that comes out of your mouth, they can count on. So you create that level of trust.
That's sound advice across the board, right? Employees, spouse, kids, do what you say you're going to do and own it when you don't, for sure. Love that. Hey, we've got just a couple minutes left. I want to ask you one last question. The premise of this show is own your business. So we want people not just to excel in one area of life. We want them to excel in all areas of life. So what is your best advice for owning your business?
Oh, man.
I like to make you think.
A great question. So here's what I love about these values. Is they're universal. When I'm coaching somebody, when I'm working with somebody, if it doesn't make an impact in their business and in their home life, then like the value isn't that great. And so everything that we've talked about with personal relationships, that translates right over to business. And so I would say the number one thing to owning your business is owning your word, where in business, you are a person that can be counted on. Like every word that comes out of your mouth can be trusted. So when you're interacting with vendors, when you're interacting with stakeholders, like they know that every word that comes out of your mouth can be counted on. Then now you've just, what you've done, so let's say you're a business owner and you've got 50 employees and you're not a person that keeps your word. Like so much energy is wasted internally where they're trying to figure out like, why is he saying this and doing that? And what's it really going to be like? And what does he really mean? Like all this mental capacity is just wasted on people dealing with the messes that you've made because you don't keep your word. Now, when you keep your word and everyone can count on it now, like 100% of our mental capacity, 100% of our workforce is just committed to fulfilling that word. and you know what's going to happen. And it just unites a team. It creates accountability. Like everything just works when you're a person that can be counted on, a person of integrity.
Love that. Don't sow seeds of distrust, sow seeds of trust. Do what you say you're going to do. And that's, I mean, that makes you an action oriented person as well. So, you know, maybe less talk, more doing, but doing what you talk about, something like that. It's probably some cool phrase that could be thrown there. Erik, you are the man. Go ahead.
You just got to be awake to what's coming out of your mouth. Like we said earlier when we started, most of us are asleep. We're asleep to what's possible. We're asleep to what we're giving our word to, what we're saying we're committed. Like just wake up and be aware of what's coming out of your mouth, and don't let anything come out of your mouth that you're not 100% committed to making sure that happens.
Amen. Such a good interview. We will definitely have you on. We could probably talk all day. So thanks for the time out of a busy day. Always good to catch up with you, Erik. I'm wearing this shirt. This is my Ironman Arizona shirt. I wore this for you.
Love it. Hey, I got the St. George Ironman in the back for you. So.
You know, I don't have a shirt from the St. George, so I did it in 2011, and the shirt was weird and it never fit. And then 2012, I never finished. I got my DNF in 2012 in St. George, and now it's a half. So who knows? Probably never get one.
Because of the storm?
Because I'm a poor swimmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was crazy, man. 5-foot swells, 40-mile-an-hour winds coming out.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Well, hey, always great to spend time with you, Erik. Thank you for coming on the show. Everyone, thank you for listening and watching. If you like this, please share this episode with your friends and family who need it or want to hear more. If Erik or myself can help you, we'll post some links in the show notes as well as here on the post on Facebook. But go out there and whatever your business is, make sure you own it.